Let me just adjust this so that you can see me.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Okay, just give me a minute or two. I was trying to see how the sunlight can come into the camera. Okay, is it better now? No. Oh, looks all dark. No, this is also not. All right, I guess now we're better, right? So good morning, everyone, and thank you for your suggestions. I could see some things say face towards the light. Your face is not visible. All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session. It's been a long gap, so I think some of you have forgotten. Anybody remembers my name? So I've not renamed my name, but anybody remembers my name? Yes. Besides ma'am, I think I had shared my name, right? Anybody remembers? Let me see whose memory is good. Guess my name. Okay, I think one have got it right, almost. Okay, so Pankaj, I think, has got it. Not exactly with the correct spelling. However, yes, it's okay. Shivtosh has got it. Now everybody has got it. All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl, and welcome to our sessions. We did a couple of sessions on questions, interview questions. We did a little bit of introduction. How do you introduce yourself? We also did a little bit on communication as well. So a little of everything is what we're doing. So today also what we are going to do is we are going to do a little bit on situational questions. All right. So I'll just share my screen right now. Hopefully we don't have the artist in the house. Yeah, like we had in one session, we had some artistic people who were trying to scribble. So I'm hoping that we don't have those people here. If you have any kind of inclination to do, please leave the session. We don't need it as well. All right, so I'm sharing my screen. Is my screen visible? If you can just type yes. Yes, okay, great. Okay, so I'm not from any other country. I'm from this country only. Okay, I'm not global, but yeah, I could be someday. All right, so welcome to our session. We'll be looking at a couple of situational questions. Now, particularly in an interview, what happens is that each and every interviewer looks at giving the interviewee a situation. Now, some situations could be things that you've never handled before, and some situations could be very generic. They could be related to what you would face in the future. Now, they're not going to ask you interview situations, they're going to ask you work-related situations. Another aspect of a professional software developer would need to have the ability to solve problems or find solutions to problems. Now, in these kind of questions that they ask you, particularly for situational, what they're looking at is how you are able to handle the situation and how you're able to look at the problem to find a solution. So they give you certain situations. Now, let's try to understand. There are situational questions and there are behavioral questions. However, in a situation, there is the humans involved, like there would be a manager, there would be a project team member, there would be an HR. So basically, in every situation, there are people related to it. And when we say people, we say behavior. When we say people adapting to a situation, that is what they want to hear in these answers. So first things first, what you need to keep in mind is every situation has different ways in which it can be handled. There is no specific, kind of options that you have. Maybe you have not just one way, but multiple ways of doing it. So it's very important to understand that how the situation can be handled in the best possible way. So what we'll do a couple of situational questions today in our session till 12 o'clock. And then maybe we will keep it open from 12:15. Then we'll keep it open to the questions that you have as well. All right, so let's begin. Now, the first one, what we would look at, okay, is the describe yourself kind of a question. Now, how the interviewer asks you this question in the interview is they can ask you, can you describe yourself in one word? Or if you have to describe yourself in two words, what would that, what would it be? Or how would you describe yourself in two words? They could also ask you, how do you describe yourself, in a sentence? Or how do you describe yourself in relation to, an animal? Or how do you, kind of connect, yourself to a particular animal? Or do you resonate any trait that? So there are a lot of things that they could ask you. But here they are asking you a question about how do you describe yourself? Now, these questions, when they talk about describe, they could be very specific, like describe yourself in one word. Now, the reason that you say, you don't say your name, but maybe you say you're confident. Maybe you say you're, a good leader. Maybe you say you're very curious. Your level of curiosity is high. Maybe you kind of say that you are reliable. Okay. Now, let's do a little activity based on that. I would request each one of you to please go on mute so that I don't have to keep going to the participant list and muting all. Okay. All right. Now we'll do a little activity. Since we're a very large number, we might not be able to see all. But how about you describe your self? And there are many kind of words many kind of options that I've given you, starting with the letter R. Okay. So think of any particular word, one word, which starts with the letter R. And it should be something that you could describe yourself as well. So I want you to write it in the chat. Simultaneously, there are other words, like a word begins with PE. Okay. So think, what can it be? Ending words lettered with ED. Okay, now I'll give you one example for the one which is ED. If we say task oriented, okay, so the two words, but it means, ED. We could also say dedicated, right? So if we say dedicated, then dedicated also has ED at the end. So that's also another interesting way. Maybe you pick any kind of word which has a Z in the word, okay, the letter Z. So you can put that. You can also put a hyphenated word, for example, cooperation, or any other hyphen word that comes to your mind as well. So I want each one of you to think. You can either start it with an R letter, that's easy, or begin with PE and, other few letters. You can also have a word ending with ED, which is rather easy. And you can also make a word. So think of it. You can probably do one or two from this as well. So I'll give you 5 minutes. All right. I will switch off my camera. I'll just give you 5 minutes. So it's 11:10 on the clock. So 11:15, we'll come back and we'll see. So what I want you to do is I want you to write your name in the chat and then the letter, the word that best describes you, so that we have your name. It doesn't have to be related to the first letter of your name. No, write your name. For example, if your name is Sanjay and Sanjay would like to put dedicated, then he will write his name Sanjay dash and then dedicated. All right. So 5 minutes for you to write it that way. I think some have already started. Okay, you need to follow instructions. So wait, hold on. Don't just do. Listen. Okay. So let's write the name and the word that describes you best among these. You can pick up one, you can pick up two, you can pick up all five if you want to. It gives you a thing to think. Try to use your brain rather than Google. That'll work well. All right. Okay, so 5 minutes for that, and then we will continue. All right. Okay, so it's 11:15 and I can see all the ones just flowing and very, very interesting ones. Some of you are not following this, okay? It has to be the letter R or it starts with PE or ends with ED. Some of you have followed it, some of you know. I can't see anybody trying the hyphenated word or the one which has Z. Okay, I think some of you have organized. Okay. All right, so we'll just read a couple of them. What is written? Some of you have written it individually. I think we can just write it together with so that everybody can see as well. All right. Okay, so we will start with the first one. First person who's written. Okay, some of you initially, I think, didn't write your names. Okay, now then you started. So let's say we have Shiftosh. Shiftosh mentioned responsible. Shiftosh, slight typo error, I think. Instead of the N, we got the M. That's okay. I totally understand. Roshan mentioned focused. That's very nice. Tarun mentioned energized. Tarun Kumar, that's very good. Varun mentioned reliable. That's good. Sandeep's also reliable too. Chirag, regret. I guess we wouldn't want to say that we describe ourselves with the word regret, right? Let's try to use something more positive rather. If we say that we have to describe Chirag as regret, then I guess the interview will regret taking you, and I don't want that to happen. All right. Okay, then we had Vinay who mentioned dedicated. Deepak mentioned eager. Okay, Deepak, I'm a little curious. Where did you get E from? And it was probably ED. So Deepak Verma, if you can write it again, then that'll be good. Okay. Sandeep mentioned peculiar. Okay, all right. I think there's a little bit of a spelling error, but just check what's the correct spelling. Kalpesh mentioned focus, that's fine. Sanket mentioned honest. So it's not as per the list, but yes, if that describes you, great. But what we were trying to do as per the activity, try to get you to think along the lines as well. Abhilash mentioned relentless, that's nice, and focus, that's also good. Arindam mentioned lazy. Arindam, first of all, L, and that lazy, if you say that you are lazy into the interview, they'll just wonder what are they hiring for you for. So they might just not hire you. So let's not put lazy as the best word to describe Arindam. All right. So Arindam, I'd like you to think of something better, starting with R or PE or have ED at the end, or maybe Z, or probably a hyphenated word as well. Ramesh mentioned regular. Okay, probably you can say regularly. That could be, or you say regular work. Maybe something like that, Ramesh, would be much more effective. Then we have Pravindra, who said responsible. Very nice. Chirag, pencil. I cannot describe you as pencil because that's not related. Okay, so I'm looking at something which will describe you. So get a nice positive word, and that is what will help. Brajendra mentioned focus, very nice. Srilata mentioned respected. I'm guessing it's a little typo error. Just check on that. I think it's respected. Shraddha mentioned radiant, very nice. That's a good one. Pavan mentioned adaptable. Okay, I don't understand how it is, but Pavan, it's a good word to put as well. Better than lazy, right? And pencil. When I mentioned responsible, good. Shushminta mentioned determined, very good. That was a lovely one. Repeated with a Z. I don't know how all the letters are used. That was a smart one, Varun. But what the interviewers will ask you, what is the meaning of that repeated with a Z? Okay. Asif mentioned gritty. Okay. I think we were looking at a little bit of words from here. So if it could be starting with R or PE, that would be good. Nikhil mentioned visionary. It's a nice word if it has to be described as well. That's also a good one. Basit mentioned persistent. Yes, that's good. Okay. Some conversation in between. Shiftos mentioned responsible, dedicated, energized. Very nice. That were good words, kind of building it up. Ashish mentioned dedicated. Deeptish mentioned realistic. That's very nice. Okay, all right. So you could not see the screen. Now you can see the screen. So if you want to rewrite it, that's also fine. Tarun mentioned motivated. Very nice. That's good. Shrikant mentioned optimize. Very nice. Very good. I think optimize, vision, optimize, view, optimize perspective, just get it more heavier, okay, more corporate, right, Shrikant? Okay, Navneet mentioned persistent, that's very good. Sandeep mentioned prepared, good. Simple word, okay, but very, very impactful, Sandeep, so that's nice. When I mentioned honest, okay, Deepak joined the class late, okay, so just catch up. Which word best describes you? And we've given you a couple of options. It could start with R, it could start with PE, it could end with an ED, it could be a Z in the word, or it could be a hyphenated word as well. All right. Suman mentioned persistent. Okay, that's good. Ani said confident. Shamim said Bahubali. Shamim and Sari, Bahubali, if you tell the interviewer that, he'll say, please exit the interview right now. Because they're not, see, it's a description. And in a corporate environment, you cannot be funny or hilarious. You have to be more realistic. And what I'm sharing with you is not just about the fun part of it, but to get you to start thinking what could be the answers that you could suggest. Like some of you mentioned visionary, some of you mentioned honest. That's also okay. That's at least a better word. But if you give me pencil, if you give me lazy, if you give me bahubali, then I don't know what your interview is going to be. So think. These sessions are interactive, but it's also getting you to go along the lines of getting a job in the IT sector. Nishant mentioned organized, well done. Ashish mentioned dedicated. Then Sandeep mentioned cooperative. Sunil mentioned similar. Okay. Probably ends with an R then in that case. Hemendra mentioned dedicated and self-motivated. That's a very nice one. I think some of you did mention self-motivated as well. Varun mentioned self-esteemed. Akanshu mentioned dedicated, persistent. Jatinder mentioned responsible, focused. Vinay, relation, I don't understand. It could definitely be a better word, Vinay. Maybe think a little more. If you say relation, maybe you could say relationship, or maybe I would say rapport. Okay, maybe rapport building, okay, with the team. So maybe that I feel would be better rather than relation. So you probably, what you mean is that you build good relations with the team, or you could build good relationships with the project manager. So maybe it would be either building a good rapport or building a rapport with the team as well. Then we have respectful, that's very nice. Responsible, self-motivated, considerate, okay. Selig mentioned saint. I don't know how that applies, because trust me, no, none of us are saints. Okay. And if we are, okay, Aarti is mentioned disciplined. Very nice, that's good. Prajakta has mentioned dedicated. Swapnil mentioned focused, disciplined, motivated, self-willed, dedicated. Harshal mentioned self-willed, dedicated, focused, determined, ambitious, artistic. I don't know where it fits into this. However, yes, we could do that. Yash has mentioned rational. Okay, rational as well. So that can be done as well. Nilesh mentions warm-hearted. Okay, Nilesh is going all soft, right? Okay, but yeah, that's fine. That's correct. I totally like that as well, because it's still a little bit on the human side, unlike pencil. Correct? Imagine if you describe yourself as a pencil. We're looking at a word, like a descriptive word or an adjective is what we would look at in this. Motivated, soft-hearted, perseverant, responsible, honest. Okay. So I guess most of you have got it right. Aman, God, you've mentioned butterflow. I don't know what is that. If somebody asks you that you describe yourself, Aman, and you say butterflow, then I don't know. Is it butterfly or butterflow? Because butterflowing is like, oh God. Right? Okay. Linga Swami is mentioned composed. That's a very nice one also. Just to add to it, probably you could say calm and composed, right? So yeah, but the composed part is like you are, patient. Could be that you keep cool as well. You don't lose it. I'm hoping. Yeah. Okay. So that's something that is there. Resourceful. Very nice. Meet Jagat mentioned resourceful, superb, that's good. Organized, responsible, peaked. Okay. XD, I don't know what that means. Organized, consistent. Aman Hussain has mentioned consistent. Okay, coordinated, maybe well coordinated. So you can probably put that as well. Okay, responsible, revitalize, zealous. Okay, Deepesh has mentioned zealous. Yes. There's also a word too. So you can mean Raja Raman rebel. I don't think so. We're not, casting ourselves in the interview for a movie where we are the villain. Okay, so rebel, I don't think so. You'd want to describe yourself as a rebel. All right. Something related to work in the IT sector would be more realistic. Okay. All right. So I guess that was a little bit of an activity that I just thought let's do it because our sessions were probably just more interaction as well. So this is one thing, one of the questions. And the reason why they ask you this is to see if you can describe yourself in one word. Many a times in the introduction, we go on talking about ourselves, but can you just make it concise, make it brief, and describe yourself in one word? That is the whole idea of getting you to describe and making it little more difficult. Otherwise, some of you could just mention that when you start thinking, that's when you learn new words as well. All right, we'll move to the next one. The couple of standard questions that are asked in an interview: tell me about yourself, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how will you overcome your weakness, what are the programming languages that you prefer, or they could also ask you what are the programming languages that you have learned in as your job. So that is when you mention what you have learned. Why should we hire you, or why do you think you are a good fit for our organization? So all these are basic kind of questions which they could ask you, and these are some of the standard questions as well. Moving on to how do you actually give an answer in an interview. Okay, what we have here is a star method. So in an interview, particularly any answer that you give, it's always nice to answer in this particular star method. It's like a tool. All right, so what do you kind of describe in this interview tool? You describe the situation, you talk about what were the tasks, you talk about the actions that were taken, and finally the result. Now, the same aspect also connects for a situational question. When any situational question comes to you, start thinking in your mind, what is the situation? Why did we have to do the task, or what were the tasks given? How did we achieve the how did we what actions did we do, or what were the things that we did to actually make it possible, and did we achieve it? Did we get the result? Is what is the last part of star. So you need to start thinking accordingly. Now I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, let's say there's one of the interview questions that the interview asks you: if any one of you are in a project team, and now the client has sent an email to you saying that there is an error in the report, what will you do? Okay. Now, first, there's a situation where you've sent a report to the client, and the client has said, now there's some error in your report. So there's the client, there is you, perhaps there would be team members, there would be a manager or a project lead. So there are people around. Now, what was your task? To probably make a program or a code, or probably design a website for them. That was your task. Action, you made it, you sent it, now there is an error. So while you were making, maybe you were less focused, like some of you mentioned a focused focus. So however, maybe for some reason you were less focused, and now the situation is that the client wants you to rework on it. So you'll relook at what the code is in terms of making the website. You look at it, whether it's an HTML or whatever kind of software that it is there. You will look at it, and then you will identify what is the error. So you'll work on it. You'll take some action from your side. And finally, what you'll do is you'll run the code, you'll test it, and then you will have the result. Of course, because the client has sent you an email, you also need to send an email to the client back again. Now, yes, there is the mistake, there is a mistake. You need to apologize. And you need to apologize, feel that yes, there is a mistake, and this mistake is okay, you can rectify it. There's a chance for you to rectify it. It's not the final stage of the project, or is not already completed and rolled out. It's in the testing phase, so you do have changes that you can make. So think about the situation. Think about who's involved in the situation. Think about what are the tasks given to you by the client. What are the actions? What are the codes? What are the changes that you need to make? And finally, when you test it, is it giving the result as per the expectation of the client? So this is where each one of you need to start thinking in terms of a STAR method when you're giving answers for any interview question, and specifically for a situation question as well. Okay, now we go on to a couple of situational questions. I'll just read it out first, and then we probably put down one in the chat as well. All right. Now, these are a set of behavioral questions. Now, when we talk about behavioral questions are more related to the behavior of people. Let me just put it down in the chat right now. Is when you are when you are interacting with the IT sector, there are certain people who you interact with. Okay, now this would be probably, we could say, team members. All right. So who do you interact with? You interact with team members. You might interact with a project lead. Right? You may have a project manager. Okay. Right. You can probably also have a project head. If there is, depends on each company, they have different designations, but we just put down a couple. Then you would deal with a client, okay, as well. Now, apart from that, you could also deal with or interact with other departments, okay. You would deal with other departments in the organization, in the company, let's put it that way, right? So you are interacting with different people, your own team, other team members, other departments. They can be HR, they can be sales, they can be logistics, they can be finance, they can be IT, they can be admin, security. They could be any kind of, people who you're interacting with. Okay. And of course, project lead, project manager, project, head of the project, or somebody who's leading the project, in charge of the project. And of course, there would be a client. So these exactly are the people who you are interacting with as well. Okay, so I'll explain the first question. First is, let's understand who do we, communicate with, who do we interact with, because all behavioral questions are all around these kind of people. Now, in an organization, what we call them is stakeholders. Okay, so we have stakeholders. Now we have two kinds of stakeholders. We have internal stakeholders. Okay, we have internal stakeholders, and what is the other? Anybody knows? One is internal stakeholders. What is the other? It's the opposite. External. Super. That means you're listening to me. All right. So we have internal stakeholders and we have external stakeholders. Can you give me an example of external stakeholders? Anyone? Who are external stakeholders? Clients, users, people who use it as well. Yes, investors. That's a smart one. That could be possible. Yes. Okay. And who are internal stakeholders? Who would be internal stakeholders? Employees, manager, CEO, developer, departments, designers, testers, on-site developers, correct, HR, process engineers, software analysts, business analyst, correct? Okay. So I guess we're clear with this. See, these are some of the concepts that you need to be very familiar with in any organization, and particularly in the IT. So understand who's your internal stakeholder, who's your external stakeholder, because that is when behavioral questions come into the context, and you get to know basically what and how these people need to be dealt with. You cannot be the same, you cannot display the same behavior with your manager and the same behavior with your colleague. Like if you have, let's assume that you're working in a project team, I have a project team which is, like mostly with the boys. So you can't walk up to, let's say if you're a boy and you walk up to one of the boys in the team or the employees in the team and say, "What's up, bro? How you doing, man?" Okay, you can't do that, right? So, and the same thing if you have to say to your manager, "What's up, bro?" He will say, "Please go." So you have to understand that your communication kind of differs when it is with different levels, right? So you need to understand that you can be a little more familiar with your team members, the people who are at your level, but someone who is a little higher, you need to understand, and you do change a little bit your conversation communication so that you are respecting them as well. Okay, right. Polymorphism. Yes, absolutely right. Yeah, that is one of the oops concept. Correct, right? Yes, one person and many roles. I remember that very well. Okay, yeah. So I remember. I don't know details, but yeah, I think I've heard the oops concept for 2 years now. Some things are in my brain. No, I don't know everything, and definitely not technical. Okay, coming back to the questions that are here. The first question is, if there is one obstacle or issue that you can foresee that might prevent you from hitting a deadline, what would that be? Now, when we look at, so what do we mean by a deadline? Anyone? What do we mean by a deadline? You can put it in the chat because we're too many. So, anyone? Last date, okay. Time constraint, turnaround time, okay. Project submission date, correct. Okay, so we can also say timeline. Okay, this word deadline sounds very deadly somehow. Yeah. Okay, timeline. Okay, so timeline or time limit or date of submission as well. Now, what this question is about, trying to ask you that what could be a possible thing that could stop you from meeting your timeline. That is a question. Okay, now it could be many things. That could be, it could be probably the time management, it could be some other kind of aspects as well. So that is where we need to stop and we need to think as to what are some of the things that we are looking at when we answer these questions. Okay, these questions are not very easy. Okay, and these questions also kind of have a little bit of specific understanding. So what could be the factors? It could be maybe you are okay, let's see, some of you are able to put it in the chat. What could be some of the factors? One obstacle may be very nice new technology, not very proficient or very familiar with it. Emotional setback, oh yes, maybe break up with some girlfriend. I don't know whether that one or vice versa, or on the other side, probably break up with a boyfriend. Okay, it could be also any family personal issues. Yes, it could be anything like that. External dependency, health issues. Yes, health issues, technical issues, obligations, personal commitments, health. Yes, insufficient manpower can be dealt with. Okay, procrastination is something that you are intentionally procrastinating and you don't want to do work, then please pack your bag and leave, they will say. Okay, so procrastination is a reason, but ideally it's not something that would be acceptable. Whereas if you talk about health, if you talk about a new technology, like one of them mentioned at the start, I think Adesh mentioned one obstacle could be that the technology is not familiar with everyone, or they're not familiar with the technology. Emotional, yes, sometimes there's an emotional kind of environment, health issue, personal issue, commitment with family. Procrastinating, I think, should be avoided as much. Yes, if you've had a loss of someone in the family, okay, then yes. Inactive, lazy, then that is your problem. India versus Pakistan, no, we're not going right now. It is Pakistan versus England. Okay. India's come back. They played and all, they enjoyed, they played as much as they could. Now they'll come back. And next World Cup we'll win. Okay. Toxic environment, again, is something which probably could be possible, but it has to be a positive team environment. So it's very difficult for it to be considered as one of the reasons to stop you from reaching there. um, for example, the client, if I'm the client, and you tell me that there is a problem with the environment or problem with the team, I will be like, no, you should sort it out as something that is there internal. Resources, yes, one of you mentioned resources could be one of the reasons, because you have lack of resources, either manpower, like somebody mentioned, um, you know probably also lack of resources in terms of the technologies. Maybe there are better softwares to work on, but the company is not getting those softwares on board to work on as well. So yes, that can also be lack of knowledge. Very good. That's also a point. Modifications, multiple projects. Generally, people don't get into multiple projects um, because it's very difficult to manage many projects at the same time. But yes, that could be, if there is, then yes, that's also one obstacle. Deeptesh has mentioned communication barrier. Very, very nice, well done, because that is also a big expectation and a big hindrance at times, because you don't understand what somebody says, and how is it that you can do it. Adesh also mentioned not clear understanding of the client needs. Exactly. So you could be understanding something, the client expects something. Understanding the need of the client, and also making sure that you're both on the same page. Or else I will do the entire work and show it to the client, and the client say, what's this? I don't need this. Right? So maybe understanding, clarifying, being more clear, and getting to a clear understanding with the client expectation and needs. Poor management, yes, poor time management. I'm telling you guys right now, if you feel that you want to work, you want to work, but when you start working, you will find yourself like there's no time. Some of you who are already working will probably find it very difficult to balance work and home, and working at home sometimes becomes like a working throughout the day. So yes, time management is a big challenge. Relocation or reallocation, teammate handling. See, teammates handling is something that we have to adjust. We have to do something about it, or else work will not get done. Unavailable to deliver good results, miscommunication. Okay. So I guess you have understood unexpected situations. Yes, in India, particularly, we have something or the other. We have one band for something. Then sometimes there's heavy rain. There's the city is like there's a holiday decided because of the flood. So in India, all these unexpected situations keep coming in, right? But yes, not keeping a track of the current project status. That's very good. That, at every point, every meeting, every discussion, there has to be, an update as to where you are, what is finished, what is not, what is pending. So all these things are absolutely important. Okay. Electricity, okay, that's a silly reason, but yeah, then get a generator backup. Okay. Resources, yes, resources not being managed or mismanaged, then that's something that is there. Okay, so I guess you guys are able to understand the question, and you are also clear. So yes, those could be multiple reasons why there could be. So maybe just pick up 2 or 3 and then answer that particular. So for example, let's say we say that because there are, if we say it's an unexpected situation like a flood, and that is why we had to kind of ask for additional time. So that could be one reason. Maybe the resources, or maybe the software that was suggested was a new software, and it took us time to understand it. So that is how it got a little delayed, but we will try as much as possible to finish within the timeline. Again, resources, manpower, it could be as simple as managing time at times would be there. If there's multiple projects, then yes, or even if it is difficult to manage time. Right? Another question, behavioral question. Now, when you look at this first question, okay, Let me just see if I can just put it in the chat. Okay, I'll just copy all the questions so that we can just read all those as well. Okay. All right, so I'll just put all these questions right now. Okay. And we will go with the next one. Okay, so I think we're clear about those kind of foresee what could be the obstacles. Tell us about how you've dealt with an unexpected change to deadlines or project scope, right? So here we are looking at in terms of how you've dealt with a change. Okay, now change to project deadline, or maybe it is preponed or perhaps it is postponed, whichever one it is. Okay, or project scope. So project scope would be what is the project details, what are the status, what is the update, and things that are to be aware of, and it's not. So that could also be one of the questions. So how do you actually talk about what were the changes? Again, pick up a situation. Maybe there was a situation, let's say there was flood in the city. Okay, it's kept raining for 2-3 days and there was a huge flood, so a lot of companies could not deliver on time. The resources that we needed could not come on time, and maybe something like that. You can give us a situation and then answer that question. So situation, what were the tasks, what was the action, and what was the result? It landed as an unexpected delay, right? So that's something that you can think about in terms and use the STAR method to answer the question. Tell me about a time when you solved a conflict at work. Now, a conflict at work would be particularly with people. So maybe you have, a concern with one person in the team, and maybe they don't take your ideas because you're new, and you feel that this is something that I need to resolve. Now, how do you solve these kind of behavioral people issues? The first thing you'd like to do is you'd like to talk to the person. Okay, so whatever the issue is, you'd like to talk to him, maybe on a call, or preferably better on a virtual call. Yes, if you're sitting in an organization, you probably want to just meet up separately and just talk it over as well. Just discuss what are the things that could be discussed. So that is where it is important to find out what can be done. So one is discussion or verbal communication. Second thing could be, yes, maybe if something is still continuing, you could probably take advice from a senior or maybe a project lead. If there's a project leader, then you can, just approach the project leader and say, this is the concern. I have spoken to him or her, but things are still a little bit. I would like you to maybe address this. How would the project leader actually handle the situation? Maybe he or she will get both of you together, perhaps maybe speak one-to-one first and then get you together and try to see what is a workaround as well. So again, the whole idea of a behavioral question is not to fight. It's not to, hate each other, but it is to resolve the issue. So what is the issue? Many times it's just a silly misunderstanding. Right? Or it's just probably us overthinking about something and then just, kind of giving it that way. So these are the things. Definitely do not go and complain to the HR. Okay. Keep it a little calm. Resolve it among your team and your team members rather than taking it to the higher authorities. Okay. Which of the company values or principles is your greatest strength? Now, every company has a certain set of values. Okay. They have certain set of values, or what they call as corporate values. Okay. Those corporate values, somewhere down the line, they also connect to you. For example, in one of the organizations, the IT organizations, their corporate value is accountability. They call it ownership, O for ownership. So ownership about your job, ownership about your work, ownership about what you do and how you are able to perform. So again, among the corporate values, which particular corporate value also has a connect to you is what they would like to know. Now, where do you get these corporate values? You need to do research about the company. So let's take, for example, you have an interview scheduled for Accenture. All right, just giving you an example. If you have an interview scheduled for Accenture, then you need to go to their website. You need to probably read information about the company, understand the corporate values that they have, understand what are, where is the head office, where is the, what are the company, what is the company into, what are the different projects they've completed, and all this information you can get on the website. Right. So that is why they want to see if you are able to read the information and then connect it. So that is where they want to see how the corporate values connect to you and your strength. Give examples of situations where you've shown effectiveness, empathy, adaptability, and humbleness. So probably they won't give you all, but they just could ask you, can you give an example of a situation where you showed empathy? Right? So when they ask you that specific example question, then you have to narrate of a situation where you showed empathy. Or if they're asking you adaptability, how are you able to adapt to the environment? How are you able to be flexible to be able to work in those kind of situations? What is the situation? What were the task involved? What were the task involved? What kind of actions did you take to achieve those results? That is what the situation is demanding for. So how do you explain that? Give an example, and that's something very, very easy. For some of you who are freshers and you don't have any work experience, probably you could share a little bit of an experience in terms of a project. When you were in a project, what did you do? How did you, make sure that you were effective? And there was a lot of effectiveness through the entire team, which brought about a lot of success, and you achieved the project as well. So what was that situation that you went through if you were a fresher? Another set of questions could be, give an example of how you set your goals and achieve them. How do you stay organized? How do you collaborate with others? What would you do if you don't know the solution for a certain problem and nobody can help you now? Only God, right? Okay, actually, that's not the fact. There will be people to help you as well. What advice do you give someone younger than you who's trying to come up in this field? Right? So that's a question where you become the senior and somebody new comes to the organization. This first question, give me an example of how you set goals and achieve them. It is a very important question. Many of you would have a long-term goal and a short-term goal. A short-term goal would be to complete this course and get placed. A long-term goal would be something that you would like to, someday you would like to be the project lead, you would like to have a team, and you'd like to achieve project success, you'd like to have clients feel happy to work with you and your team. So these could be some examples that you can start thinking of and mention that in your answers as well. How do you stay organized? Again, this is very correlated to time management. Okay. And the first question which we asked you is, what kind of obstacle could come? And some of you mentioned time, right? Time management, work balance. What are these? They're actually talking about how you're not organized. What do you need to do first? How do you prioritize? How do you really stay in connect with it? That's very important. Okay. So staying organized is probably a very easy question, but they want to understand, how do you stay organized, not just with yourself, but also with your team? How do you collaborate with others? Again, like we said, behavioral questions are all about you and how you behave with others. So how do you collaborate with others? How do you work together with others? Do you fight? Do you call each other names? or do you work together to achieve one common goal? What would you do if you don't know the solution for a certain problem and nobody can help you? Yes, solution number one is Google, YouTube, right? And to a very large extent, it's fine. That I think you should also try to think, use your brain. Because tomorrow, if we don't have any internet access and we don't have anything, any search engine, how are we going to find out information? We're going to think, right? What do we do? So try to think about it in terms of what would you do? Yes, maybe ask people for help. You do not become small if you ask somebody for help. You don't know something, you don't know. And if you're new in the team, definitely you don't know. So ask people for help as well. Maybe they're busy, maybe they say they don't know at the time, but once they finish, then they will probably come back and help. So that's also good as well. But make sure that you start getting the help, or else you cannot find the solution to the problem. What advice would you give the younger future software developers who are going to come into this field? You can't say no, don't come at all. Okay, but maybe what are some of the things they need to learn before they actually start their career? So all these are a set of behavioral questions related to people, related to situations, and of course related to what do you do in these situations is what behavioral questions are all about. Okay, I will just copy this also, these questions also, so that you could just copy it in your list and maybe paste it as a requirement later whenever you have it as well. Right? We will try and compile all these questions also and try to share it with you. But since we're in this session, we'd also like to put it across as well. Okay. Okay, let me just, okay, we'll just do a little bit. We've just got another 2 minutes more. Yes. Okay. Right, so we're done with this. The next one, okay, and this is something that we would probably do a little bit from this week and probably next week as well. In this job, you might be given tasks you haven't done previously. How would you deal with them? Okay. Now, this is a little bit of an answer. Okay. Maybe anybody would like to volunteer to read this particular answer. You just have to read it. Anyone?
May I read it?
Yes. All right. Go ahead.
In this job, you might be given tasks you haven't done previously. So how would you deal with them? So possible answers which have been presented over here. I always find it helpful to research and consult experienced colleagues or seniors if I can. I also take care to double check after a few steps so I know I am doing it right. And the third one, lastly, I always review the results before submitting them to my superior to reduce room for errors further.
All right. Thank you so much. So what we've done is we've just given a code answer or like a sample answer. It's not like you have to read and say the same thing, but you can kind of think along the same lines as how do you find it helpful to do research? Now, very important in any job is that you don't know everything. And even though you may go through a training here and you go through a training in the organization, you don't know everything. You need to do a little bit of research. You need the guidance of people who have been working, experienced say seniors, experienced team members. You need their guidance as well. Like in our organization where I worked previously, whenever there was a newcomer who joined the team, that person was always put with one of us. So because we were the seniors, we would have one newcomer come and sit with us, and they would observe what we are doing at least for 1 or 2 days till they are familiar with the job. So yes, you need to consult somebody because you're new. Okay. Yes, you may have the work experience, but if you're totally a fresher, and yes, you need the support, and you need that kind of experience hand holding from somebody in your team. Yes, you need to be focused and you need to be cautious that you're not making any mistakes. right? So you need to double check, you need to triple check, or maybe check, right? But yes, try to check so that there are no errors and there is no problems that come up because you have not focused as well. Lastly, yes, before submitting, you can always check it with a senior, or check it with a project manager or a superior, just to ensure that there is no error, or there is everything that is there is fine. So this is one of the aspects where we look at possible questions and what could be possible answers as well. Okay, we'll do one more and then we will stop. Okay, some of you had said that you wanted to read. Okay, so I can't share this PPT with you. This is my original one, okay? This is Cheryl Mead, okay? So Adesh, you'd like to read? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So suppose you make a mistake at work, but nobody around to notice it. Would you let it pass so that things can continue smoothly, or stop and confess so that it can be corrected? And the suggested answer is, my past experiences have always taught me that it is better to take responsibility and own up to your mistakes. Even if I do not disclose my mistake immediately for the sake of maintaining calm and order, I would always admit it at an appropriate time. The fear of rebuke does not deter me if it means I can improve and do my job better from that point onwards. Meaning of rebuke. Okay, meaning of rebuke is express sharp disapproval or criticism of someone because of their behavior or actions.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. So if you look at, this question is more focused upon, are you responsible? Are you accountable? I'm not sure how many of you are responsible, but some of you who wrote responsible, better be responsible, okay? So when nobody is watching you, now understand work culture is not like a school or college. Nobody is there to check whether in the class or you're not, whether you're in office or not. You need to be accountable. You need to be aware of what time you come to office, what time you leave office, how long are you spending in your tea break, lunch break. You can't be chatting and surfing your social media platforms while you're in office. You need to work as well. So when nobody's watching you, are you working? Are you dedicated? And yes, maybe if something goes wrong, then what do? Do you accept it as your mistake or you deny it? I'd like to share one incident with you. It happened in an organization where there was a communication by the HR, and there was something very specific that had to be done by the developers. One of them probably understood it, differently, and he just went ahead and did what he felt like. Now, when it came to the submission part, he submitted what he had to do, but it was not as per expected. So he was questioned by the HR, and then he said that you have said this, and what you said I have done. And the HR was very sure because the other people in the room who submitted the assignment was had done the correct thing, what he mentioned. So somewhere down the line, when you try to argue with somebody, you try to prove them wrong. But in that realization, or in that kind of situation, he's not realizing that um, it's not just the HR and he who spoke. There were a lot of other people also who took the same instruction. So when you're wrong, you're wrong. When you're right, yes, you're right. Correct. And of course, we learn a lot from our mistakes. Okay. I'm not sure if I shared it with you once but in the session, but when I was in the telecom sector, the first mistake I made was I wrote the mobile number 9 digits. And my manager was furious. She was very upset. Like, what is this? You should know this is basic. But I was not from, I've probably never seen a mobile in my life at that time. And for me, it was like a new job and everything was new. So I really didn't understand much and I did make mistakes. So I made one mistake on the first day. Then I made another mistake with the second customer. I forgot to write the complete SIM number. So first mistake was I wrote short mobile number, 9 digits instead of 10. Second mistake I wrote was a SIM card number. I didn't write the complete number. I missed out the last digit. So I was making mistakes, but then I realized, and of course she fired me. We had very strict manager. She fired me a lot. And she said, Cheryl, what is going on? I mean, where are you? What is this? How many things you have to? So somehow it kind of hit me, and I said, okay, now I need to stop. I need to focus. I, of course, apologized, and I told her, now no more mistakes. I said, I promise you. I went back, and the third customer I attended, I made sure the customer sat. I checked with her everything. And then she said, yeah, we're good. And that's how I learned. So I did learn from my mistakes. And, she asked me, what happened? She said, weren't you trained? I said, I was trained only for 2 days. And I didn't learn much, but yes, I will put down a lot of effort into learning, and I will learn from my mistakes as well. So, yes, it's not wrong to make mistakes. However, learn from your mistakes, own up to the mistake if there is. Do not contradict it, because they will find out. So they say if you lie to cover one lie, you'll probably tell another 100 lies. So let's try to restrict that part of it. Ownership, accountability, remain calm, admit it as well. And like it's mentioned, the fear of rebuke, right? So you may think, oh, what will my manager think, that I'm not capable as well, I'm not fit for the job. Yes, if it happens too many times, perhaps he or she will think. But if it happens once, or it happens just very few times, and you're able to learn, rectify a mistake, then definitely they will not despise you. They will understand you. And when you join any organization, the first few months definitely are some things where you are learning, and they don't expect like 100%, accuracy. You will make a couple of mistakes here and there, right? Okay, so I will just stop sharing. We do have another few more. Since it's past 12 already, we'll start off with the questions. All right, so you can put down the questions in the chat. Yes. Pankaj, you've raised your hand. Was this to read, or was this for a question?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Okay.
So, ma'am, suppose like in interviews, like interviewer, they ask, like we used to answer on the basis of our past incident in behavioral medicine. So,
Correct.
what if I don't have a particular past incident in that particular context? So, how we should answer?
Okay, so see, the whole idea of these situational and behavioral questions is not to get the right answer, but to understand how are you going to handle it. So, for example, if you have not handled a situation where an error report has come to you by the client, now you have not handled that. They just want to understand, okay, what are some of the things that you would do? Just think for 2 minutes. Imagine yourself in that situation, and then think, what would you do? Right?
Okay.
So they want to see, and they also want to see how you communicate. Now, in these situational questions, one, use the star method. Also try to use solutions and say, this is the possible solution, this could be done next, this could be done. Give them more solutions as well to the problem. So that is what is important. Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. We have a question. Divya has written a question. How much reasonable is using sir and ma'am? Does it create somewhat a gap between me and the senior? Because I read it somewhere in the Western and American countries that they call them by name. Okay, so Divya, to be very honest, I think ever since I started working, we have always called everyone by their respective names. So even if it was a manager, a senior, okay, we would always call them by their names. We would never call them sir or ma'am. Okay? It was just a culture. And today also, many IT organizations expect you to address each other by name, not by sir and ma'am. Now, it's like a force of habit, because in your engineering life, you've always used sir, ma'am, sir, ma'am. Somewhere it's probably got into your bloodstream. Okay, now once it's entered your system, it's very difficult to change. So it takes a little while, but yeah, you have to start, kind of calling them by their name. However, sometimes in certain places, in certain cultures, if they're a little older, like they feel it's nice to kind of, they feel they want to be respected and they want to be called sir or ma'am. I mean, it's totally left up to you. Initially, I would say, yes, you can call them that. And if they, reciprocate and say, call me by my name, if they tell you that, which I do very often, then I guess then you can switch and call them by their name. Even managers, HRs, heads, they also kind of follow that kind of a trend that they call each other by their name. So I don't think it's just a Western culture. I've been through it throughout my work career. I've never called anybody sir, ma'am. They're all my managers. So so I had managers, Glenver, Sean, Preeti, uh, Valencia. So these were the managers that I had, and we always called them by their name. Yeah, I don't think so. I ever called them ma'am or so. All right. So keep it to first name. It's different from the culture that you see in a college or maybe in some as well. So I think you can, it's kind of fine to call them by the name. Yeah. However, sometimes, like I said, first thing you could do, you want to call them maybe, with the sir or ma'am, just to be safe. And then if they say or they tell you, please call me by my name, please call me Cheryl. And if they say that, then you can get an idea as well. Yes? Okay. In the interview, we want to just express ourselves, or are they very tough English compulsory? See, in a interview, in a verbal interview or an online virtual interview, they don't ask you very tough questions. However, yes, questions related to the job, questions related to the technical aspects, maybe those I think they would probably make a little tough. But in terms of English, not really. As long as you understand the question, you're able to explain. Like, for example, when we did introduction questions last time, we said the HR could ask you, can you walk me through your profile? Now, what does that mean? Introduce yourself. We're not walking anywhere. So yes, sometimes candidates do not understand the question, and that's when they find it tough. So you need to go through a lot of interview questions to be familiar with kind of what questions are there and how you could answer them as well. But otherwise, they don't ask you very tough English questions. It's more very generic. And at the moment you understand the question, in the best possible communication that you have, you can use as well. Okay. I do not have a tech or science degree. And if they ask me, why should you hire me? I don't have a technical background. Okay. So let me tell you one thing. Today, when I train a couple of organizations and, we do an introduction round, most of them are non-technical. They don't have a science degree. Some of them are BTechs, but they're not like a computer science. So it's absolutely fine today, as long as you have the knowledge which you're learning right now in this place. And as long as you're familiar with how do you use these software programming languages, you're aware of the knowledge, and you have implemented that knowledge by making a project or something like that. So be focused on what you have rather than what you don't have. So if they ask you, why should they hire you? Perhaps the answer would be that you should hire me because I have learned the software language and I'm proficient in it, and I'm more than capable to handle a project. I am ready to work on the software. I'm confident enough to handle and create a website or whatever be it as well. All right. Okay. Situation questions aren't easy because easy to answer. Is it okay if we take a pause before answering, or the interviewer will take it negative? Probably when you hear the answer, don't give it too much of a pause also. Okay. Try to slow down your pace a little bit in terms of what you're saying, but I wouldn't say take, if you ask for a little time, then perhaps it seems like you're not prepared. Okay. Now, the best way to handle this is when you see now you don't see the situation question, they just ask you the situation question. If you listen to the situation question clearly, pick up one or two words and kind of start off with that. So, for example, if we say, how would you handle, conflict in your team? Now, one, you need time to think. Start off with, if I'm in a team in the future, I would like to handle a conflict in, and then, so I'm slowing down my pace. I'm a little slow when I say, okay, but you have to start thinking quickly, right? So maybe next week, I can share with you a couple of links where you can read through the situational questions like we wrote, a good answer. These are all sample answers, something that you can read. Don't want you to by heart the answer. We don't want you to, say each and every word to word like it is, but we want you to start thinking, making your own answers, and getting to handle those situations with quick thinking method. Not just stopping as well. So yes, if there is a pause, it might be a concern. However, you can try asking the interviewer for a little while, like give me a minute to think about it. You could say that as well, but still, again, it doesn't mean that then it kind of feels like you can't think on your feet. So I would say slow down the sentence, start a little bit, and simultaneously start thinking. You need this processor to be faster. Okay. All right. How could you be a good leader to lead a team? Okay. How could you be a good leader to lead a team? Okay. So, firstly, you have to try to understand what is the goal of the team. What do you need to achieve? So, first thing is look at the goal and what you need to achieve. The second thing is look at the team. What are some of the skill sets that you observe in the team? Let's say the team has some members who are very good at email writing, some members in the team are very good at verbal communication, some members who are very good with software. Identify each team member's strength and area of improvement. When you do that, you know your team better. It is easier for you to work as a leader. If you identify one of your team members who's struggling with software languages, and there's another team member who's experienced, senior, maybe ask them to mentor them and guide them as well. So utilize the strength of your team effectively as a leader. A leader does not do everything. A leader needs to manage, a leader needs to delegate, and a leader needs to get things done. Yes, another aspect of a good leader would be that a leader needs to be with his or her team, not working, because they are the manager, but working together. The full form of a team is together, everyone achieves more. So it's very important that the leader starts thinking that what they can achieve together is much more larger what they can achieve individually. So firstly, understanding the leadership in terms of the goal of what you need to achieve, your team strength and area of improvement, and finally being a leader who leads by example and leads as part of the team, not as an authoritative person. Okay, when someone calls you by their name, they will tell you that until then you can use sir and ma'am. Yeah, they do. Sometimes you can very politely ask. Okay. So in communication, we have one concept called assertive communication. Maybe some of you can Google it. Assertive communication means that you ask somebody something positively, politely. So you can actually, ask them, is it okay if I call you by your name? Or is it fine? Is it fine with you if I call you by my name? Is it fine if I address you by your name? So you can seek permission as well, right? So yes, it is something that you can do as well. This is the culture which most organizations follow today. Okay, so you can call them by their name as well. Okay, just wanted to know how much to speak, so we're not stretching our answers. Yes, this is a very good question. Do not go too long. If they have asked you, describe yourself in one word. Don't give full description. And don't describe the word that is told. If I have to describe myself in one word, the word would be reliable. That's it. Short. I would be reliable and I would do this. No, don't get into too much. So many a times, because of the time factor, and also you don't want to go on and on with the answer, you don't want to stretch it too long. Yes. However, if it is a situational question, then yes, you would have to give the situation. Then it's a little elaborate. You can also, ask the interviewer also, saying that, would you like me to elaborate? So you can ask them a question. Would you like me to elaborate? So you can, talk about. So let's say for a fresher, if they ask you a question, explain to me about your final year project. Now, it is about your project. So you will say that we completed a project named so and so. This is what we did. This is what technology we use. A little bit there. Now, if you want to elaborate, then you stop and say, do you need me to elaborate more? So ask. All right. And then you'll know whether they want you to continue or not. If they say no, that's fine, then it's because what they're doing is they don't looking at very lengthy answers. They're looking at I don't know what happened. Suddenly, we probably got uh, disconnected. Yeah. And it just kind of showed that we were offline. Okay. So let me come to the question. There were two questions asked. Um, yeah. Okay. So most of the situation, I guess, would be similar for both a big MNC and a startup. I would like to ask what kind of situation questions one might ask, and we should be prepared. And when applying for a startup, since there is no culture to be fitting in, I somehow beg to differ to that, because even though there's a smaller company, perhaps a startup, they still have a culture, they still have certain things that they follow. So the situation is not going to be very different. And I think it could be identical also at times. Maybe the clients would be different, maybe the projects would be different, but the situation doesn't change. And even if it's a startup company, they have to have a culture, they have to have their values. So I would feel that it's kind of going to be similar. There's not going to be much of change. So your answer is not specific to the company. The situational answer is particularly referring to the situation. It could be in an MNC, it could be in a startup. So it's reference to a situation, not reference to a company. All right. What should be the answer of it? There's much would be a better and really big opportunity after a year or two, which would be the probable, then what would be? Okay. What should be the answer of if there is? See, if there is a better opportunity in the future, and it is something that you were waiting for, that you worked for, after a year or two, then I guess the probable answer would be that you would take it, right? Why would you not want to grow? So I feel that if there is something in terms of an opportunity that comes, you would want to take it. If it is, let's say, a startup to an MNC, or from an MNC you feel no, you want to work with a startup because there's less people, less stress, whatever is your criteria, then yes, you can probably decide that as well. Okay, so there's a question. Yes, in my internship they insisted to call them by their name, but I just couldn't. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It happens a lot today, and it's been happening since a long time. Work has begun. Is this in colleges and schools that we have this ma'am concept? I think in colleges. So I don't know if I've told you this, but in my college, we had a tradition of calling the professor's name first, and then followed by sir or ma'am. So for me, it was Pratibha ma'am, Aruna ma'am, um, Matthew sir. So it was not very difficult for me to drop the ma'am and sir. So I found it was easier because we were anyway using the first names of the professors in our college. This was our college culture. So yeah, I think maybe some colleges should change their culture, right? They should start something where we call them by their name so you guys get used to it. Or else now anyway, you're aware that you have to start calling them by the name as well. And let's understand, even if somebody's old, it's not like we disrespect them. The way you say their name, okay? So if I say Manish Gupta, I say, good morning, Manish, right? I mean, I'm just saying it nicely. I'm just saying it in a different way, polite, excited, right? So it's the way you say it that matters. If I say good morning, Manish, sir, it's like I'm reporting to you. Say good morning, Manish. How is your day so far? Good morning, Manish. How are you feeling today? It's just kind of very different, and that's I think what they really want. They want to kind of understand the culture needs to be more in terms of a one-to-one person base rather than keeping a gap between I'm project manager, I'm here, and your software level, entry level, you're here. So don't kind of get into that, right? Okay. How could you be a good leader to lead a team? Okay, so good leader to lead team. I think we already touched on that as well. So yes, a lot of leadership qualities that you can do. So read upon leaders' leadership qualities. What do they do? Yes, they need to think. They need to be more team oriented. They need to be good communicators. They need to be able to handle situations, handle stress, handle the client, bring in business. So yeah, lots to answer for that. Can we start calling our batch manager by the name? It's kind of a practice. If they are okay with it, I mean, it's fine. Like for me, in my session, you can call me Cheryl. And that's why I asked you my name. Right now, we've had like a break. But otherwise, I had told you earlier, we could call each other by our name. So it's fine. Absolutely fine. Okay. How do you build communication skills? Okay. So when you talk about communication skills, if you kind of specifically tell me what are you looking at building, because in communication skills there is vocabulary, there is articulation, there is pronunciation, there is sentence structure. What exactly are you looking at? I'm not sure if I actually mentioned this to you guys. There is an app called Cake, okay, and there is one more app called Duolingo. Okay, there are a lot of English learning apps on the phone. I think for now, if you want to learn communication, I think you can start off first with those. Just learn a little bit, listen to it as well. YouTube is a very nice platform, particularly if you are a person who listens and learns, then that's also one good platform. So you listen to an audio, maybe you I was reading a couple of things on how people should work on enhancing their ability to communicate, and there was one very nice recording which I heard. It's actually comprehend. Okay, the whole idea is comprehend the communication. First thing he spoke about in that was to read. Okay? So Krishna Kumar, if you want to build your communication, first read. What do you read? Read information about your industry. Read a blog, read the website. Okay, read as much of information as you can, because reading enhances your database. Okay, why? Although you may feel that, oh, but I don't remember so many things, how it will come back. Trust me, the brain is excellent. So you just have to believe that you need to start reading first. Now, once you read a couple of things, then you start relating it to it. So if you read an article, let's say the article is pertaining to artificial intelligence. How artificial intelligence is being used today. Okay, how self-driven cars are going to come in soon, how electric cars are already there and some companies are investing. So relate it. What you've read, where do you relate it? All right. So that's where you kind of, get to read and start relating it to what is around you. Third thing that you could do is you could write. Now, what you've read, what you've related, maybe you'd want to write it down as well. So you can write it down in a Word document, or you can write it down in a book, whatever you want. Now, don't just copy paste. Okay. It's not the idea of copy pasting, is to see what you've read, what you're able to relate, and how much you can actually write in your own words. Don't worry about the grammar or whatever. Just as much as you can, start writing. Like, just force yourself to think, okay, I read about artificial intelligence, I read about electric cars, and this is what they mentioned. There was an example. Just write it down. Okay, as much as you can. That's another thing. Finally, think about it. If there's any friend or family member or anybody around you who you can teach that information back. So one, you've read it. Second, you're relating it to the current situation. Third, you're writing it. And fourth, you're teaching it back. That entire cycle will start helping you to develop your mind to start communicating. Another trick that he mentioned, if you don't have anybody to teach, then take any object. Okay, maybe the plants. If you have any plants in your house, or if you have a pet at home, maybe just communicate that information, what you read, what you feel you get relative information or related examples, and just talk to the plant or talk to your pet animal. I know it sounds very strange, but you're actually talking. You can also record yourself if you want. But I don't know, for me, I'm too conscious if I record myself. So I'd rather probably talk to the plants as well. And maybe if you have a pet, or if you have some of your family members, you can do that as well. So you have to keep working on it. Communication cannot just be improved in one day. You have to keep working on it. It's a continuous process as well. Right? So make sure that if you can try this, Krishna Kumar, awesome. It will be worth the start from today. Right? Okay. Dilesh has a question. But ma'am, suppose we freshers at organization at the time, also we can call them by their name, or we can think we should call respect. So Dilesh, again, the same thing. You can initially call them by sir and ma'am and see how they react. Okay, and if they just say, call me Cheryl, like I do, then yeah, then it's cool. If they don't say anything, they're okay with, they'll just enjoy the sir, ma'am, then fine, you can keep it that way. But in the organizations, most of the time when you have these HR and training sessions, they generally tell you what to say. All right. Okay. So there is Sultana B, who's mentioned, I have internal fear when I'm communicating with persons for the first time. I feel more nervous to answer. Could you please suggest how to overcome? Okay. So Sultana B, the first thing that you would like to do is believe in yourself. That's the first thing. That's confidence. Secondly, when you say that you have a fear of talking to people, the fear would be due to some reasons. Maybe you don't know English very well, or maybe you feel that you will not use the right words. Maybe you feel that you're comparing yourself every time to somebody who speaks better. Now, how I'm able to speak, I'm able to speak. This is who I am. Okay. but I read, I relate, I think a lot. And maybe that's what makes me, better at my communication. So I am working on it every time. Similarly, to communicate better, you need to keep communicating as well. One of the things that you can do is ask questions. That's the most easiest thing. So right now we said, put it in the chat because it's very difficult otherwise for everyone. But next week, instead of writing the question, Sultanabi, I would say unmute, switch on your camera and ask the question. Be facing the fear rather than running away from the fear. So you have to overcome it. There is no way. You have to keep trying. You have to keep doing it. Nothing is impossible, right? So think about it. That's the best way to practice it as well. Okay, Rakesh Raj has mentioned I've studied mechanical engineering. So I've done some projects related to that. Should I mention those projects? You can probably mention it a little bit. Yeah, don't get into too much of detail. Focus on what you're learning now. But yes, you can mention it a little bit. Like what was the project about, what you did, how many members, and did you achieve the result? That's it. Don't go too much in the technicality of it because that is not what they need to know. But yes, I feel you should. Also, Rakesh, I'm currently doing a training session with an IT company, and I'm telling you, out of 25, 12 of them are mechanical engineers. Okay. So, and trust me, they're there in the company. It's a software company. So I don't see why they will not take you. Okay. They will definitely take you if you have good knowledge of the software. And when they ask you some technical questions, you should be able to answer. Like, I don't know. I was just kind of talking to some of them and they will talk about like what programming language is used, what programming language is used to, build a website, or some more kind of questions. If you're able to answer that, then your degree does not matter as on date. Yeah. Okay, ma'am, can we ask, so Deepanshi has a question. Ma'am, can we ask the interviewer if it's a startup, how many employees are working? No, I think you cannot ask the interviewer that, sweetie. You have to find out. Yeah, you have to find out. You have to go to the website before you go for any job interview. You have to find out. It's like you have to do your homework. You have to do your research on the company. You know the company's name, put it in Google, search the website. Go to their website, check out which is their headquarters, who's the founder of the company, who's the Indian CEO if they have, who is when was the company started, what are the projects, who are the clients. You have to start reading that out. You cannot ask the interviewer that. If you're going to ask, even if it's a startup, they will be like, you don't know anything about us, you need to know. So you're joining the company, but you don't have any information about them. That's not acceptable for them. All right. Okay. On the flip side, flip side, I think, Akshay, how would one answer questions on switching jobs after 5 to 7 years of experience? It's kind of a little difficult question, but if you're passionate and you really enjoy and know that what you're doing now is what you enjoy and you're good at it, then I think it shouldn't be a problem. And today, many organizations need people who are good at their software language, software programming skills. So if you're good at what it is, your break in the career does not matter much. Just be confident. And like I keep saying, don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you're good at. Keep being positive. Okay. How to rectify the long gap after education? Okay. If you don't have any work experience and there's a long gap, then yes, they might ask you what you did in that gap. A lot of people have preparation for exams, like, government exams. So people understand that that is something that is there. But now when you've decided to come back, your decision and the confidence in which you say it needs to convince them that despite the long gap, I'm skilled, I've got the knowledge, and I'm ready to work in this organization. So it has to be confidence, and leave the gap that is there. We can't change the past, but we can work on our present, and we can build a better future. So focus on what you have. We need 8 GB RAM to think. I think you God has given each one of you a brain. You just don't use it to think. You just Google everything. All right. Okay. One of you asked me my LinkedIn ID. Okay, 1 second. Okay. I'll have to just log in. I don't generally log into the LinkedIn ID. Let me check. Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay. LinkedIn somehow has become almost like Facebook, I think sometimes I feel. Yeah, earlier it was not like that. It was very precise. It was, very, it was very professional. Somehow it's kind of, becoming all those animated things. Okay, there you go. Okay, so for the question that one of you asked for my LinkedIn ID, I've done that as well. Okay, okay, so we're done with this, how to update about what is going on surrounding country. You have to read Divya. Newspaper, one, start connecting on LinkedIn, going through some of the websites. LinkedIn is a good platform because a lot of companies put their information on that. Follow many companies, just follow them and you'll get the information that you can read. Intentionally go and search software company, Accenture, Capgemini, Wipro, TCS, just put company names and start going to their websites, reading information. Their information is not going to come to you. You have to start searching. Okay. For future growth, we need more focus towards the CTC or salary in hand. For future growth, first of all, you need to learn how to do the job properly. You need to have the right behavior. You need to have the skill. If you have the skill, if you have the right behavior, then the CTC will anyway grow. I started working for 2,500 per month, and I never worried about CTC or in hand. It always increases if you are hardworking, smart working, and putting in efforts for you to use knowledge and skills. That's it. Money will come. Don't take too much of tension. How to answer this question? Rank yourself between 1 to 5 for leadership quality. If you rank 4 out of 4, so it should be a sample answer. Okay. So Meena, yes, you'd not like to rank yourself too high. Okay. Now, if let's say you're an experienced professional, you worked in an organization. If you're an experienced professional, then you can put yourself at maybe 3. Okay. 3 or 4 if you feel that you have displayed leadership in your in your career. If you have a work experience, if you're a newcomer, then maybe you probably say 2.5. Okay, 2.5, half of it. Right? Because you still have a lot to learn, right? Or 3, whatever. But again, you have to quantify how did you show leadership in that? Leadership in the project, leadership when you took up some events in college, all those things that can come in as well. Okay, so if you have work experience, little higher rating, don't give full because there's no scope for improvement otherwise. And if it's a fresher, then yeah, maybe keep it halfway through the mark. Okay. In the last job, my manager came up with this concept that if everyone calls anyone else ma'am, we would pay 580. Yes. So it did happen actually. I think in the year 2017, there was one of my trainees who joined the company. He joined HP, and in that the trainer told them, please do not call call us by ma'am or so. And he was a male trainer. And this trainee of mine who used to never call me by my name, although we were there for 30 days together training the batch, he never called me. And then finally, when he got into HP and the trainer said that, he was force of habit, he said, sir, and he ended up paying 500 rupees as well. Of course, the trainer gave them the money back, but just like a punishment. Yeah. So as much as try, and this, I'm not sure about the other facilitators or trainers. You can check with the mentor, but for me, I'm okay with you calling me Cheryl. So somebody say, Cheryl, another session at 1 p.m. So please make it short. Yes, I'm aware of the time, and I will stop a little before 1 o'clock so that we are good to get you and prepare you into the next session. How to make short talk more interesting, as many people don't prefer short talks. When we talk about short talk, it's called small talk, not short talk. Small talk is generally general conversations about the weather, about the travel aspect, about what you wish to do. So it's basically some conversation which is common and which is for a short duration. So you can't keep on talking 2 hours about the weather. So it's short conversation about the weather and short conversation about food, short conversation of which place to party. Yeah, short conversations that you can kind of discuss. Don't discuss conversations related to politics, religion. That becomes a little personal. Yeah? Do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. Okay, all right, got it. The future growth. Okay, salary. Okay, I'm going to stop since you guys are hungry. I understand. What is the answer if the interview asks you why I switched my career from mechanical to IT? Don't say that there are no jobs in mechanical, that's why I come to IT. So you have to show the interest towards the programming software languages. You have to tell them why you're interested, and you should genuinely be interested if you want to switch. If it's only for the money, it will remain for some time. After that, you'll probably leave and go somewhere else. So decide that you want to be there, you want to work. This is something that you like, you're passionate about, you're curious enough to understand how softwares are built, how they're made, and you want to create something on your own someday. So,
Cheryl, I have a question. Sorry,
yes,
before you leave.
right.
The question is that if you have a career break of like 1-2 years, and actually I was working while I was studying, then I took a break and it was into teaching and things like that, and I want to get into IT now. So how do you justify that break?
So you have been teaching, right?
Yes, but it was not as an employment thing. It was just a freelance kind of a thing.
See, so were you teaching something technical or were you teaching something
No, it
non-technical?
was about it was into economics. So now I want to go into IT. So how do you justify that?
Okay, so you don't go to justify that. Maybe just generically mention that you were, you were freelancing. You were freelancing for this duration into maybe training or teaching, yeah, as a freelancer. So just put it into that context. That's it.
And do I have to mention it on the resume? Because I haven't done that. I just mentioned the previous experiences that I had in the companies.
It will show a gap, right then.
Yes.
So I would say mention it, but don't write too much.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
And one more question. There's kind of a fear in the IT sector now because there's so many layoffs.
Yes.
So and probably the companies would take advantage by pushing down the CTCs now they're offering probably. So and also there's general fear in us that are there jobs really in the sector. So what do you say about that?
Okay, so I would kind of agree with you. Right now, there is a reduction in the number of jobs in the IT sector. It is reducing. To be very honest, there are layoffs happening because there are not much projects coming in. So the number of people required is less. So the companies are downscaling. Even to a very large extent, recruitment is not happening full-fledged. That's also kind of getting less in number. So what earlier used to be like 10,000, 20,000, it probably become 5,000, like half of it. And it's gradually reducing because the cost to get in somebody is very expensive, to train them is more expensive, and then finally they leave and go. So What they're trying to do is whoever is there in the organization, they're trying to just reskill them and get them to fit in. So they don't have to recruit many. So opportunities are getting less now. However, we really don't know what the future holds. But we hope for the best that things will pick up. It won't be completely like there will be no jobs in IT. That's never going to happen. Okay, for the next 2 to 3 years, there'll always be some jobs, but it definitely will be not as much as it was booming in the last few years. Yeah. Also, if you read about things like moonlighting, which has happened as well, companies shutting down as well. So there's a lot that is happening right now. But yes, it's better to be prepared as well if you have to. And if you get a shot to give a company the interview and you get through, you might get the offer letter, but you do not start. So they have if you're able to read, some companies have offered offer letters, but they're not able to start because there are no projects and there's a lot of things that the company is still contemplating on. So yes, it is a difficult situation right now, but we'll hope for the best. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome.
To ask you, ma'am,
Yes, tell me.
please offer some insight regarding salary negotiations. For example, if I'm a fresher in this corporate sector, and if they are offering me something, so do I have that right to mention, or can I bargain or do something like that, or just I have to accept the offer?
Okay, see, the salary negotiation for a fresher is very unlikely. Okay. However, you also have to check what is the salary that is in the market. So if you look at Glassdoor, Indeed, and some other online portals, it kind of gives you a salary range. Even if you go to Naukri and check out some, positions, some software profiles, they will give you a salary range. So you have to do a little homework, research. Okay, you have to do a little research to find out what is the average salary. So I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. So one of the students or employees had actually given an interview, and the salary that the company was offering was 15,000 per month. Now ideally I feel that is too less, plus they wanted to sign a 2-year contract. Now 15,000 plus 2 years, it's like you're stuck with the same salary for the next 2 years. So somehow I felt it was a little kind of not a very favorable offer. So I suggested, my advice to that employee was, why don't you try some other companies? And he waited as well. He didn't join that company. He waited in probably next 10 days or so. He got another offer in Hyderabad, and that was starting salary was 25K per month. So sometimes you need to wait, but you need to find out what's the average salary as well. Negotiation may not be a criteria, because if you don't come with experience, there's no way you'll negotiate. They will just want to, probably say that this is what we offer. And in some companies, they have a cap. They have only this much of a salary. Even if you ask for it, then they'll say, no, you're out of our budget and we cannot hire you. If your expectations are high, then they cannot match that. They have a salary bracket to cover or close, and they feel that's it. So that's how it is in the real world.
And Cheryl,
Ma'am,
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times they do not offer us a salary in the interview. They ask for the expected salary, and you just don't know whether you're going to quote very high or quote very low. So what to do in that case?
So see, if I do a little research, like I said, if I do a research for a fresher, it starts between 3 to 5 lakhs. Again, it depends from company to company. So let's say if I've done my research for certain companies and it shows an average of 3 to 5 lakhs, maybe I'll say 4. Okay, I'm saying just put in between. So they'll negotiate. If they say no, 4 is too much, then maybe you can negotiate a little bit. They'll say, this is what I'm expecting because this is being offered in other companies as well. So you can just mention, oh, this is being offered in the market, right? So you can just mention that and see how it works. If they say, no, we have only 3 lakhs per annum or 3.5 lakhs per annum, then it's good to start. Once you start in any company with whatever salary that you get, it's a good way as a fresher to start somewhere, get a good salary. Then later on, once you get the experience, salary keeps on increasing. I started at 2,500 per month. How many of you will work like that? So trust me, what I was in that context, in that age, it's almost the same right now, right? So yeah, let's keep it that way. All right. Okay. So there are lots of questions. And we don't have
Ma'am,
much.
can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Ma'am, actually, whenever I do a mock interview, I take your job. At at the end of the interview, they ask, like, do you have any question to ask? And like, sometimes I don't have any questions to ask. So how do I like say that I'm not having any question?
Okay. Firstly, I would wonder why you don't have any questions.
No, ma'am. Sometimes, sometimes, like, like.
No, it is just a plain diplomatic. I don't want to ask any question. See, I'll tell you what. There are a lot of questions that you can ask. One, what is the company culture, or how is the company culture? You can ask a question, if I'm hired, which location would I be deployed? Okay. You can ask a question, would I get an opportunity, to learn more programming languages in the trainings that you have in your company? You could ask a question, what are the current projects that your company is working on? There's so many questions to ask. And there are many things in the interview which are not covered. Why is it you cannot ask a question? Right?
Yeah, got it, ma'am. Got it. Thank you.
Don't ask personal questions. Don't ask their salary, of course not. Don't ask personal questions. Yes, if you want to kind of get it a little more simple, you can also ask them, how is your experience working for this organization? That's also simple. That's nothing related. Culture, very important. You want to know the environment. You want to know the kind of, culture that is in the company. So these questions are related questions. So think of at least 2-3 related questions which they've not answered. That is what your questions should be in that. Do you have any questions for me? Like that. Okay. Yes. Got it?
Yeah, got it, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes. Okay. We'll
Sure.
take one last question. Okay.
Okay. Sure. One last question. So basically, let's say I've got a good grip on Java language, and I'm applying in a startup, and they are working in, let's say, JavaScript or Python for say. So the thing is, since it's a startup, there is no like probation period or a 3 or 6 months of training time. जहाँ पे वो सब सिखाएंगे, right? So how can I convince this this recruiter or this interviewer कि हाँ, I can do it, I can learn it in just a span of time. So ये कैसे convince करेंगे? Just in short, like.
Okay. So probably if you don't know something, then maybe you would want to kind of say that very confidently. You need to say that I am positive that I will be able to learn it in the next 6 months or 3 months, whatever the duration you feel as where. The other thing they would want to know is how will you learn? Okay, how will you learn? Like, what will you do to learn those particular? So let's say if you don't know Python,
Okay.
now they will ask you, okay, Yash, how do you want to learn? How would you learn it? What's your answer?
Open courses available to me, resources. I'll go through them.
Correct. So courses online that you can learn, YouTube, maybe some, if the company has some specific courses that they offer, all that can be something. So you have to give different ways in which you can learn, even though you don't do it. So you have to show that openness to learning and try to give them at least 2 to 3 ways in which you will learn.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you next Sunday. Keep hold of your question if I've not answered it, because it's 1 o'clock and I don't want you to get you late into the next session. Have an awesome Sunday. It was lovely meeting you. I'll see you next Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this session, ma'am.
Most welcome.